in mid-Canterbury, Ashburton, it's in the wake of, in actual fact, the Christchurch earthquake. Ashburton and Timaru, but Ashburton in particular, went through a massive building boom. Large numbers of people headed there. It's not very far away. It's probably the most boring drive in the world, actually, just quietly between Ashburton and Christchurch. In fact, there's many a time that I've made that journey, and I've got to be honest with you, there are parts that you lose the will to live. I'm never quite sure if I'm going to get to the end or I'll simply die in the middle. I imagine if they talk about the old Catholic line about you die and then you go to purgatory and then you either go to heaven or hell after you've been purgatory, I think the stretch of road between Ashburton and Christchurch is where purgatory is located, just quietly. An endless ennui. Anyhow, despite that, Ashburton took off and it's become a very big place, mid-Canterbury. One day they'll get a decent rugby team, but not this year, or not last year. Anyhow, as cut a long story short, they have a problem with cats. Now, a lot of South Island, a lot of rural New Zealand has a problem with feral cats, but they've decided, no, in Ashburton, they might go one step further and look at some form of cat management policy. Hard to believe, but there you go. Well, is it hard to believe? We'll find out what the background is. We're joined by the Mayor of Ashburton, Neil Brown. His Worship joins us now. Neil, lovely to have you on. You know what I mean about that drive, though, don't you?
Yeah, no, I do, Michael, and good morning. Yeah, it's a horrendous drive, but not much to see on the way. But once you come across the Rakaya Bridge and into the Ashburton district, it's just like going into heaven, really.
Good on you. There's no mere like a good booster. Do you still play that game where you travel across the Rakaya Bridge and you hold your breath?
I do hear some people do that, but just recently the speed limit across the bridge was dropped to 80 kilometres an hour, which is now under review as well from the government's announcements last week. So when it went to 80, some people brought that back up and said, we need bigger lungs to get across the bridge now at 80k compared to 100 what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, last year we talked to, or the last 2 years in actual fact, we've talked to a particular school in North Canterbury that have been involved in the Great Feral Cat Hunt, and that's sort of brought out a whole series of greenies and animal rights activists from whichever particular rock they were living under. But mid-Canterbury, you've got the same problem. You've got feral cats and they're causing a problem, and now you're thinking of actually introducing a bylaw. Explain to me how that's going to work, mate.
Yeah, we've got a biodiversity advisory group which we have here at Council, which has members of the community on, and they do things biodiversity-wise. And in Methven, the people in Methven are looking at doing a project. It's called the Birdsong Project. So looking at taking some council land and planting some native trees and fauna there to attract native birds into the centre of Methven, and all sorts of other creatures that will live in there as well. So it'll be fenced from the bottom to keep the predators out, but cats can get over fences fairly easily and defeat the purpose of inviting the birds back with the native plantings if the cats are going to catch and eat the birds. So the group that's doing that has come to the biodiversity group and said, could you ask council if they would investigate looking at a cat policy? And that group has approved that, so they've got a recommendation to council now to look at having a formal cat management policy. So at the early stages, so it's yet to go to council, but that's the idea, and it's just looking at Methven is where the need has come from for that project that they're doing.
Now, with all due respect, a cat policy, what does that mean? I mean, presumably that will be district-wide, or you're just thinking of Methven?
We could do it. Generally, policies are district-wide, but we could do a trial policy just for Methven if we wished, and expand it to the rest of the district if it worked well. Not sure, but council hasn't yet had the discussion, so the report will be written and it'll come to council in the next month or so to see what council wants to do. There's also our neighbours, which on that road that you drive through in the Selwyn district on the State Highway to Ashburton, they've had a cat policy for a couple of 3 years now. So we'll also be doing some work with them and ask them, how's their policy worked? Has it achieved what they wanted it to achieve? And if it has, that might be great. But if it hasn't, is there a better way of doing it? We can always regulate, but sometimes we can do things better without regulation.
Yeah, just to go through that, the Selwyn District Council, as I understand, require all domestic cats in the district over the age of 4 months to be microchipped and registered. Well, that's one thing to write that down. It's another thing to enforce it, I guess.
That's right, and that's why we would like to talk to Selwyn District Council and just see how has that worked. Has it worked well or not? And obviously that's for the domestic cats that you'll microchip and do that with. Doesn't capture the feral cats. So, how do we tackle the feral cats and differentiate between domestic and feral? Obviously a microchip would do that, and you can trap cats in traps. If it's microchipped, the trap recognises that and won't exterminate it. But if it's a feral cat with no chip in, or any cat with no chip in, well, it will exterminate it, the trap. Is that too tough? Not sure, but council will have that discussion.
It's always been a bugbear for dog owners that they have to register and pay for their dogs and go through a series of registration type issues, including making sure they're up to date with their health checks and inoculations, etc. And that their dog can be put down and you can be charged if your dog is found outside essentially domestic dwellings, but cats somehow get away with it. Are you striking some of that as well in your area?
Yeah, they always bring up the stance that your dogs have to be registered and chipped and all those sorts of things. But generally, from our experience with the dog control, the dogs that cause the most trouble are the ones that are not registered. And they come to our attention and they either get euthanized or they get registered and chipped and released back to their owners. So, it's the good dog owners who pay for the bad dog owners. Nothing's really fair, I suppose, when you look at it like that.
You're also suggesting, and listen, I know that it's an issue throughout the South Island, but I'm sure it's an issue in the North Island as well. The number of feral cats and the population of them have exploded. I know farmers have reported this to me. I'm a regional councillor as well, so wearing that particular hat. And yet there seems to be no defined pest management policy to do with feral cats in New Zealand, as there is with stoats, mustelids, possums, even rabbits. You got the same problem in the Canterbury area?
Yeah, we have lots of feral cats here. And if it's a New Zealand-wide problem, which it probably is, perhaps central government would need to regulate, and we all just pick up on that. So we all do the same thing to lower the numbers of these feral cats. And an interesting fact that the birdsong people gave us at the biodiversity meeting was each unspayed female can produce more than 300 kittens in its lifetime.
Wow.
So that's obviously making a fair dent on the birds that they and lizards and the insects that they eat. Yeah.
So are there anybody who's running counter to this particular argument? I mean, we got animal activists who decided that the North Canterbury School was being incredibly cruel. Have you found anybody opposed to what is being proposed in Mid-Canterbury?
I've just been watching a few comments on Facebook where it's been muted there that the council should look at this policy. And, yeah, there's opposing arguments for both sides of if you're a cat owner, their cat never kills a bird, and
sure.
They stay inside and do exactly. How would you know? You don't. And it depends whether you own a cat or you don't own a cat. I think depends on what side of the fence you're on. So it's a very interesting debate we're going to have.
To be honest with you, I own a cat, Puss. She adopted me about 7 or 8 years ago. I never believed that cats killed as much until I met this cat. My God, they are killers, and they just do it for fun.